He was given less than a 10% chance to survive. But Brickman Allen didn't just survive, he rose. Today, he's sharing his unfiltered story from battling bullying and depression to finding faith to building a life that empowers others to overcome the darkest moments of their lives. If you're struggling, if you've ever questioned your worth, if you need proof that God can use the broken, you're not alone. This conversation will shake you, heal you, and ignite something deep inside you. Let's get into it. This is Not Alone with Melissa Sue Methvin, and my guest today is Brickman Allen. Now, Brickman Allen, I am so honored to have you here and that to share your story, because I know this is why I do this. It always reaches someone and many others that will never know. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for the invite. I love your mission. I love your focus. And I'm hoping that between the two of us today, we can connect with somebody that really needs to hear this message to improve their life.
Yes, I'd love to start from your story of the home invasion, because I think just to understand what you went through during that.
Yeah. So it was basically 22 years ago. I was married just 1 year and 1 month. So basically in that newlywed honeymoon phase. My wife and I had already experienced some tough things, but our first year was really blissful other than that. We had a miscarriage that had occurred months earlier. And by the time that we hit that year and 1 month mark, we were figuring things out. My wife was pregnant again at about 3 months pregnant. And we came home from a friend's birthday celebration of his 1-year-old daughter. And as we came home, it just felt like things were in place. We had it figured out. We both were well employed. We had what we understood to be a healthy baby, being born in
Was
about
that
6
different
months.
than before? Was that different than years before? Or?
Well, the first year of marriage, I've always been told, is the hardest, right? You've got two minds that come together that really struggle a lot of times in financial, understanding how we're handling finances. What does the future look like? And we'd only known each other 5 months before we got married. So we were in this expectation that the first year was going to be hard. And in reality, the first year was one of the easiest in our life. Other than that miscarriage, we really focused and centered on God. We were trying to bring that religious part into our life, and we were learning how to compromise and live together. So, the hardship of having that miscarriage and then wondering, is there something wrong? Are we ever going to have a child? Everybody who experiences miscarriage goes through that, and it's devastating. And we had to do a lot of blood tests, weekly blood tests, to understand why the miscarriage occurred and if it was due to some type of genetic thing going on. So
did you get any answers once you dug more into it? No
answers. It was just, everything looks good, go ahead and try again. And so we tried again. And 3 months in, everything was great. Heartbeat was strong. We'd just bought our first home. We'd been there for 6 months. Just things were clicking, and it was amazing. And then we go to bed that night just in this blissful state of thinking about the future. And I forgot to close the garage door all the way down and watch it all the way down. In life, it's the simple things that really lead to greater tragedy or greater things that we aren't expecting. All I had to do is watch that garage door, and I didn't. And so the garage door opened back up because a fishing pole fell in front of the sensor. I didn't lock the inner garage door. And so at 5 o'clock in the morning, July 11th of 2003, a man walking through the neighborhood saw an opportunity for a quick score. And so he just walked right into the house. We were still asleep. And he starts going through my wife's purse. And when he didn't find the quick cash he was hoping for, he grew angry, threw it on the ground, went into the kitchen, grabbed an 8-inch chef's knife, and then actually removed his shoes so he could be as quiet as possible as he crept into the master bedroom. Oh. And when he got there, I'm not sure what the whole situation was, why he was so angry. He was a perfect stranger to us, but he was so angry he stabbed me in the chest with that knife and put all 8 inches of the blade into my body and then broke 2 ribs with the handle.
Wow.
That's when I woke up to my wife screaming and a man standing over us and attacking us. And it's probably the first time I felt fear in my life, like absolute fear.
Yeah.
And it was just reactionary at that point.
Yeah. What was your reaction? Were you thinking, this is it, I'm done? Or you were ready to just found strength and courage to fight back, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting. I have this firm belief that in life, we're prepared for what comes next. God always finds a way to prepare us. Even when we don't feel prepared, if we look back, we figure it out. In high school, I was this smallest kid in school in my grade, 16 years old, maybe 5 feet tall in my cowboy boots, and less than 100 pounds. And I've got this big name, Brickman, right? So I was bullied a lot. By the time I got to the point that I was big enough to stand up for myself, I'd been reading books like Louis L'Amour. I'd been learning about cowboys. My dad, he always told me the cowboy was the white knight. He was the one that protected other people. Like that was his duty. And so I like to say that in that moment where when we woke up, we pushed the man off the bed opposite of where my wife was at, and the full cowboy protector just kicked in. And I got up, and as I got up and started to fight him, my wife did the amazing thing of grabbing a cell phone and running down the hall, taking care of herself and our unborn child, which to this day I'm extremely grateful that she had the strength of mind to run.
Yeah, because help. A lot of people freeze in those situations as well. You never know how you're going to react.
And the crazy thing is it's so funny because, on social media, I'll put my story out there and people will say, well, why didn't she help fight? And that's, when you're a protector and my whole job is to protect my wife, and if she's in the fight, all I'm going to be thinking about is positioning myself between her and the attacker. With her out of the room, I could focus on one thing. And so she did this absolute amazing thing. And talk about we call them tender mercies. You can call them mini miracles or whatever you want. Just things started to happen that kind of proved to me that there's a higher power that's really looking out for us in ways we don't recognize.
Yes.
As she's running down the hall, she hears 911, what's your emergency? And she looks down and somehow that cell phone had called 911.
Oh my gosh, you just said that and I get this. They're like little signs, affirmations. I get full goosebumps. You saying that it was.
And,
wow.
And the amazing thing is on the other line, someone goes, the person who said 911 and what's your emergency, it was the most tenured person in that call room, the one with the most experience.
Wow.
And my wife goes, this is my address, my husband's being attacked. And before my wife finished the sentence, she had already issued an all alerts bulletin to send everybody to our house. So she was able to get down the hall and lock herself in a room, and then it was just my job to keep him from getting to her. And we know that the total process before the police arrived was 3.5 minutes because we have copies of the 911 call. Okay. We can't listen to it. It is the most heart-wrenching thing you'll ever hear.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's sitting there saying how she can hear me and she's wondering if I'm alive.
Wow.
But we know that at the 3.5 minute mark is when the police arrived. And at the 3 minute mark, you can hear sirens in the background. And I remember at 3 minutes, finally getting to the point where I have him pinned to the ground by God's strength and mercy, and trying to figure out what's going on and have a conversation with him, which...
Yeah, how do you look in his eyes, If you looked at him in his eyes, what did you see?
I used to tell people it was the first time I saw pure evil.
Okay, I love that you say that because I feel that I felt pure evil. Whatever overcame my husband, I felt that.
Yeah.
I felt that. So I'm so glad you said that. And I would see it in his eyes and I could feel it. So that's why I was so curious what you saw, because you talked about this anger that you felt in this intense energy. Something was, kind of in him,
I have this theory, and it's personal belief that when you are seeing that somewhere in your life, whether it's coming from somebody else or you're feeling it internal, it's because there's an opposing force to good, and that opposing force knows when you're on the precipice of greatness. And it's going to throw everything at you to keep you from greatness.
Yes.
And was I at that point in my life? I don't think so. I don't think the next day I was going to go out and try to change the world. But somehow that opposing darkness, that opposing force to good and to God was trying to keep me from being able to be a force for good in the future. And whatever means this person who attacked me, he was a drug addict.
Yeah, what was his history? What did you ever learn about him?
We
a little
did.
bit?
He actually escaped that day. They didn't catch him for 15 years.
Wow.
But we knew from the get-go that he probably was high as a kite. We used to have M&Ms on the front coffee table. He shoved his pockets full of M&Ms. And so we got these cool crime scene photos where all the way down the street are M&Ms just scattered like Hansel and Gretel to where he went. So we're kind of like, okay, he had the munchies or whatever was going on, right? He was craving food. And his history it's heartbreaking. And we found out later on, born into an abusive family, just broken home where he was abused constantly. They finally removed him from that home and put him in foster care. Again, into a place of abuse and neglect.
Oh, no.
The only time that he found any type of community was in gangs. And then you have this process where through gangs, he got into violence, he got into drug use, and was just completely addicted to drugs. The longest he's ever been out of prison, his entire adult life is about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Because he keeps going back for drug use or for petty theft or these other things. This was his big first crime. But yeah, his story is that he was completely under the control of substance. And when you're completely under the control of substance, you are more apt to that place of anger or that loss of self-control, and that's pretty much what happened. And he was just angry in that moment.
Yeah, in that moment, yeah. I mean, I think of, crystal meth, you're saying like the sweets and all that stuff and the uncontrollable. But that's why I'm always so curious, what was their early life, You talked about abuse, and if he's never worked on himself with that trauma, that self-worth was so taken away from him, stripped away as such a young man, and then he seeked it in the wrong places and environment. It sounds like his environment just kept getting darker and darker.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is what felt safe to him, right? And bringing on all that darkness, because I even say that in my book, is like you have to be so watchful in your environment, because more darkness that you bring in, then you're in that dense kind of energy, and you're kind of further away from God.
Yeah.
Right? To allow that light in. And for my husband, by the end, I could tell, couldn't see the light. Yeah. Couldn't see it. And it sounds like that's kind of where he was at, and that you saw, unfortunately you were, at his tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, I think that part of the empowering process of forgiveness that we had with my wife and I with him, think about every single masculine example he had in his life abused him or was physically, attacking him, even in gangs. I mean, it's a hierarchy where there never is peace, and it's always who is the toughest one in the room. So he's always in this environment where the masculine person has to not only be tougher than everybody else, but has to dominate them. And so his only understanding is abuse and physical power. And so when he's angry and he's in that place of darkness like you're talking about, that's where he goes, is to abuse and physical power. And who can I overpower and dominate?
Another strong man to prove himself. Yeah. Wow. And then, so you said, so I love the call where it's, God's little miracles, and I saw that even in my own, trauma, finding my husband. There were a quickness to the 911, everybody that came, the ambulance, the firemen, and the police, they all said normally it would take half hour or more because of where we were on the island. But that day, everything happened so quickly, like the little miracles that happened for us to kind of create almost a flow for us, for that day, and ease to help us, guide us through, But I do remember before I went into that room, I prayed to God. Yeah. I said, please help, protect me, And I love that God showed up for you as well. And then once you were stabbed and they arrived, I mean, after that, your wounds.
Yeah.
Were you taken obviously right away to the hospital and
Yeah. Yeah. And really quick before we go there, I just want to mention something that you brought up. We have these mini miracles, this tender mercy. Sometimes God's hand is not fixing things. It's easing the burden enough so that we can carry the load.
yes.
And that's what he did for you, it sounds like. And that's what he definitely did for us. So when the police came in and they cleared the house, they grabbed my wife. And one of the things I'm so grateful for is this police officer that grabs my wife and actually takes her outside, wraps her in a blanket, puts her in a police cruiser in the driver's seat, and starts the car and said, I'm going to stand right here, but if you feel scared, just drive off in the car. And he was all about protecting her. And to the point that after I was put in the ambulance and taken away, before he took her to the hospital, he went into the house and tried building 2 or 3 different outfits for her to choose from so she could change into something. Like, this man was just so gentle and concerned about her mental welfare when he knew that she was physically safe. And as a man that's a protector, thinking back on that, I'm just eternally grateful that there was this man that was put there by God that had that tender heart, right? And I love that you say angels, because we think of angels with halos and wings, but they're not. They're the people that come into our life that really change things.
Yeah, for me was I always talk about the organ donor specialist at the hospital, because I had to have a meeting with him, and it was all so consuming. And they were saying, okay, yeah, your husband's an organ donor, and you go through all the logistics, and you're like, I don't want to do this paperwork. But he truly was an angel, because I was frantic to find therapy for my children. And I said, well, how can I explain everything? You need to help me find a therapist. And he says, no, he looked at me, he said, no, you're going to need it first, because they're going to look at you on your healing. And so I said, okay. And he gave me this number of this gentleman that I did a Zoom with, and it changed my life forever. That's how I was taught breath work. And, I remember through that breath work saying that I felt God and I felt peace, and so he was definitely an angel guiding me to my own healing, taking time for my own healing, and giving me that therapist's name. And how important that was to take care of me first. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing how he saw that? He recognized it and he led you towards that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing the people that come into our life, right? And that's what happened. I mean, these paramedics, these SWAT, they come in, they clear the house, they put me on a helicopter. And I like to teach, when I teach a lot in religious platforms. I teach at high schools. I teach at corporations about, overcoming trials. But when in those religious settings, I'd like to teach that, God has perfect timing, and we sometimes forget that. And one of the most amazing things is they put me in a helicopter flying towards Scottsdale Memorial Hospital. And for those of you that aren't from Arizona and don't know Scottsdale's kind of like our Beverly Hills. It's where you can go there and you can see the rich cars, the big homes.
Absolutely.
The Scottsdale Memorial Hospital, top of the line, everything. If there's something 10 years old in that hospital, I'd be absolutely surprised. And as a person that's really, I was stabbed 7 times, and I fainted from the loss of blood. Flying to the hospital, I flatlined twice. So you would think, let's go to the hospital with the highest paid doctors and the state-of-the-art equipment. But halfway there, I was in and out of consciousness, and I come to, and I hear the pilots yelling that Scottsdale's gone dark. They're no longer responding. And they weren't going to be able to land there because they couldn't get clearance.
Oh, wow.
And one yells, I've got Maricopa. And they banked that helicopter, and we went towards Maricopa County Hospital.
Wow.
And Maricopa County Hospital is using equipment that's 30 or 40 years old. So this is 2000s. So they're using equipment from the 1960s and 1970s in this hospital. If it was me personally, I'd be like, no, I'll wait my turn at Scottsdale, right? But the interesting thing is I land at this hospital, and this nurse that's over the trauma unit and the operating room in the ER grabs 2 surgeons. One was going on shift, one was coming off shift. And she put them in the room, and she says, I need you now, puts them in there, and they start operating on me. And they immediately find out my lung was kind of sliced in half. So I lost a third of my right lung.
Oh, wow.
They just removed it. Your lung has lobes, and so they just took the third lobe. You can function fine with less lung capacity. The diaphragm they were able to repair, but the liver was at about 15% functionality. And so they go through this process of getting me stabilized, putting me on a ventilator that's breathing for me 75% of the time. They put 33 units of blood into me. My body holds 9, so I bled out 3 times. And they finally get me to this point of stabilized and in this induced coma. And they leave the incision in my stomach for surgery open so they can monitor this liver. Because the liver can actually heal itself 100% if it's healthy, especially, if there's no alcohol use in it beforehand. It's this miracle organ, really.
I always talk about that. Like our bodies can heal itself if we give it that space to do so, right? Like that time, that clarity, yes.
And that's all they wanted to give. And so they just figured he's in a coma, he's not going to move around. We're going to kind of see what's going on. And then they come out and they go to talk to my parents and my wife, basically saying it's time to go back and say your goodbyes. He's probably not making it 24 hours. The most interesting thing is these two surgeons were the top surgeons in that hospital. And they had never worked on a patient ever in their life together until I showed up right when one was going on shift and one was going off shift. So I like to talk about how God and his little mini miracles held me off from going to Maricopa County just long enough to redirect me at the exact time that I got there. Now, the other amazing thing is I love Maricopa County Hospital. They actually just built a new one. They demolished the old one that I was at. But they have this burn unit there that is world-renowned. And so doctors actually come from all over the world to learn how to operate and to act in trauma situations to Maricopa County Hospital. Even with this depleted, unuseful equipment, they are world-renowned. And so it's amazing that where I thought I needed to go this pretty place, Scottsdale, with all the high-tech equipment, God knew where I needed to be.
You need to be. Wow. God's timing. I love all these little miracles that you're pointing out. There's a perfect timing for everything, and got to trust it. And almost, you had mentioned forgiveness as well to your attacker.
Yeah.
How important that was probably for your own healing and your wife as well. I have often people asking me, wow, how can you be grateful for what happened, right? The suicide. Yeah. I said, I had to forgive. Yeah. I had to forgive and be grateful for it all. As hard as that is to say, but to forgive, I had to forgive, of that pain. And same for you. Yeah. How did you guys, how long did it take you to get to that point to start forgiving? And did you guys have resistance to forgiving?
Yeah, I think, so I was listening to an earlier guest and they said something about grief is like a fingerprint. It's different for every person. Forgiveness is the same way. My forgiveness, partly because because of my past experience in high school and being bullied and in that state of depression and experiences from when I was a younger child, forgiveness became an obsession to me. It was kind of this interesting thing my mom would talk to me about all the time. Rick, not everybody's black and white. Nobody has, it's not that everybody has to do it the right way. There's other ways to do it. You need to forgive people. You can't hold grudges. It was just constantly being told to me. And when I came out of the coma, I was supposed to be in that coma for weeks at a time. I only was in the coma for 3 days. And immediately when I came out of the coma, somehow I realized that there was a lot of anger and darkness in people towards this man. I couldn't do anything about it other than forgive him myself, to almost release everybody else, to give them permission to forgive. And so forgiveness for me was kind of this miraculous process that, because I'd been working on it, again, I think that we're prepared for the next step. And so I'd been prepared to learn how to forgive. I forgave him before he even left the hospital. And in a sense, because of the process I went through, I have this deep abiding love for the man that it's very hard for me to explain. Only because I can say that part of it was to help other people be released to forgive, but partly that I had learned that holding on to whatever anger we have is basically channeling that darkness you talked about inward.
Yes. It just hurts you.
Yes.
The holding on to anger, I always have the analogy, the backpack and the rocks in the backpack. You hold that resentment and it just brings you down as well. So you've got to start letting it go. I know you talked about the hospital. I forgave, my husband as well. Of course, I saw his pain, but just seeing my children's pain, it was just also a mix of anger, how can you do this to the kids as well? But I forgave him there on the bedside, because I just had compassion. Yeah. Compassion, and almost I felt sorry that I couldn't see that depth of his pain beforehand. And I know you mentioned depression when you were younger, because you were being bullied. How did you survive that bully? Because sometimes nowadays, I know somebody that works at the Hope Institute here in Arizona,
Yeah.
and they get calls in elementary schools now for suicidal thoughts. And that's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. And I know a lot of kids, my kids go through some bullying and here and there. So I'd love for you to, it sounds like you had a great, your mom talk about, how did you navigate that?
What's interesting is as somebody who's in depression and experiencing bully, we become masters at hiding it. We're some of the greatest actors in the world, and really we have proof of that. I mean, look at Robin Williams, this funny, amazing actor who was fighting depression his entire life, and he hid it so well. So it's interesting because my mom had no idea I was suffering through depression or the suicidal ideation that I was experiencing in high school until she came to a speaking event I was at in my 30s. And I remember telling the story and looking over and just seeing tears rolling down her face. And it was heartbreaking for me. And I come across people from high school all the time, and they're like, Brick, I had no idea. And so that's as a parent, if you have a parent and you're watching your children, you just have to look for those signs of.
What are those signs?
They try to isolate themselves. They're non-responsive when you ask them questions. A lot of times it's a change in behavior. They'll, before school starts, they were eating really well, they were sleeping really well. If they don't want to go to bed all of a sudden, where before they went to bed, it's a sign that they don't want to go to sleep, because that means they got to go wake up the next day and go to school. It's the little tiny nuances of change of who they were to a new person. And those signs say something's going on. And it may not be depression, it may be other things that are going on. But as parents, we have to be hypervigilant of watching the little nuance and change.
Yes, I always say observe. Actually, I'm writing a second book right now, and in it, I have this chapter. I say observe. We have to go with our intuition, and observe our children, observe what they're trying to tell us, right? And what are their symptoms? Because I talk about gut health. Actually, we've gone through some mold toxicity.
Oh, wow.
And it was really hard because it mimics so many other illnesses, right? Yeah. But I had to just be really vigilant of just observing the symptoms and when it's coming and going. When we were going away for a couple of weeks and, we're feeling really healthy. But when we come back and they're back at school and this and that, the symptoms are coming back. Yeah. So I love that you say, just observe. Yeah. Start, maybe even journaling is what I say, start journaling and seeing patterns, Yeah,
and the key as a parent, I know that and I'll get back to kind of talking about how I experienced it as a kid, but as a parent, the thing is we have to bring safety into every conversation with our children. And that sounds a little bit interesting growing up in the generation where we were told to rub dirt on it and just walk it off, right? We didn't talk about therapy. We didn't talk about psychiatrists. That was a no-no. Growing up in a very masculine centered way of life, cowboys roping and training horses and whatnot, you're not given a lot of leeway to be showing emotion. And not that my parents ever discouraged it, it's just that was society at the time. And the unfortunate thing is now as adults, we carry that into our adulthood, and our children, if they never see us vulnerable, if they never see the emotion that shows that we have weakness, we're destroying things. And that's the greatest strength that we have, especially as men, to show that vulnerable side of it. I currently do keynote speaking on what I call vulnerable leadership. It's interesting. I wear a cowboy hat. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm not your smallest guy. Mm-hmm. Every stage I get on, I'm shedding tears. My office has seen me cry over experiences I've had as I shared experiences and struggles and trials with them. My kids have seen me cry on multiple occasions. And for the longest time, I didn't let that happen. I fought against it until one day I just kind of let, so to say, the dam break, and I just let the waters flow. And the amazing thing is that when you do that and you let down your own guard, the other person lets down their guard.
Yes.
And they're going to open up, right? So it's one that you got to give them that safe space by showing the vulnerability. But the other thing is it's your reaction. I'm not perfect. My kids will tell you that I'm not.
Neither am I.
Yeah, right? But when your kid comes to you and you said, I made a mistake, if you're an adult and you're saying, why would you screw up like that? Or I can't believe you do that. And if you immediately attack them, All you're saying is every single time you come and be honest with me about when you made a mistake, I'm going to be mad. But if you change the script, and when they come to you and say, I've made a bad mistake, Dad, and you say, wow, that was really hard for you to tell me. Thank you so much. I'm so proud that you could come to me and tell me that you made a mistake. Now, how are we going to work on this? How are we going to fix it together?
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
And so if you have a kid facing depression, which one is going to go to their parent and which one's not?
Yeah, to open that safe communication and connection, and sometimes leaving that space for that. So making time for connection, I try to really, that's why I created, I call it my sacred corner, and where we can connect on deeper level and do kind of now I call them gut check-ins, where are they at, and being really open. And actually I did that with my daughter. She kind of shared something that was going on. I said, wow, I'm really honored that you're sharing that with me and you feel comfortable and you feel safe. And I hope to always be that safe place where you can, even the things that are so hard for her, to maybe she's done something wrong, like you said. Yeah.
And unfortunately I didn't have that. And it wasn't because my parents wouldn't have reacted the right way. It's just the generation I grew up in. And so what's interesting is I was struggling and I was spiraling, and a substitute teacher of all people who was teaching for about 2 weeks somehow recognized I was in this dark place of depression. And if you've never experienced depression, most people don't understand it. It feels physical. It feels like it weighs you down. And somehow he saw this. And so one day I came in and he was teaching science and biology. I think he threw away the entire lesson plan for the day. And he put a pencil down on the desk right in front of me, and he starts teaching the class about how if you repeat something enough times, you'll believe it absolutely. And he says, if you say enough times you can't pick up that pencil, it'll get to the point where you can't pick up the pencil. And then as class ends, he asked me to stay behind and have a conversation with him. And this scared me because my whole thing was I ran from one classroom to the next because the bullies were everywhere. They felt like around every corner I was going to be attacked. And so I had planned routes where I could get to the next class the fastest and avoid people.
Wow, so always living in that fight and flight at school all day long.
Yeah.
So that alone, living in fear, right, as God says, when you're living, if it's kind of that lower kind of, for me, I always call it frequency or energy. Yeah. And so that draws in more of that kind of darkness because you start believing that you're unworthy and you're, not loved. And so you're believing all of that. Yeah. I love that teacher. Yeah. I said, watch your thoughts, because I'm constantly teaching my kids. My son will spiral with thoughts like that, unworthiness and guilt and shame. So I actually posted a whole bunch of affirmations in his room. And you have to be so mindful, especially for kids, what you're constantly saying, that little shame critic, or I call it actually the little bully inside your mind. It's like, what is it saying? Yeah.
The worst bully in our life is the one internal. Mm-hmm. It's always, and I say it's that enemy of light and enemy of goodness that's putting that in your head, and you spiral. And as soon as it starts coming down on you, you get worse and worse. But the interesting thing is somehow he recognized in me that integrity was very important. It was something that was very instilled with me. And I don't know how, it was like, is this guy some like master wizard psychiatrist or, whatever. But he said, Brick, I'm not going to let you leave this room until you make a promise to me. And that promise is that for the next 30 days, you'll look in the mirror and say something positive about yourself, but you can't repeat yourself once. And at first I refused. And so he said, you can't leave until you commit to this. And so I freaked out and I said, fine, I'll do it. And I ran out. And that fine, I'll do it was me committing to something. And if I don't follow through, it ate away at me. And so it was a week or two later that I started that process. And what's funny is at the time we had Saturday Night Live, and you had, I think it was Stuart Smiley, and he would stand in front of the mirror as part of his little like show and skit, and he'd say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Mm-hmm. He says the same thing over and over again. And I think that sometimes we do the wrong thing with words of affirmation. I think they're very powerful, but I think if you're saying the same thing over and over again, you become a broken record and you say it just to say it, and there's no belief behind it, and that's where you lose the power. So him telling me I had to do something different every day was interesting at the time. Very forward thinking. And I did it. And it was really a humbling experience at first because, you look in the mirror and you're just like, hey, Brick, you're a nice guy. You start running out of ideas. I remember by week 2, I'm winking in the mirror, telling myself I'm a ladies' man. You know, like seriously, I used to turn on the shower, the bathtub. I'd flush the toilet. I had both things going because I knew that my siblings were just outside the door listening, and I'm like, they're gonna blackmail me for life, right?
That is hilarious. Oh my God.
You know, and then it gets worse. I mean, I remember right after that, you know, all 100 pounds, flexing and looking in the mirror and telling myself I'm the strongest person I know. I didn't know the truth behind it. I mean, going to school every day when it's just dark halls and darkness and like the things that you see that you just want to avoid. I was seriously strong.
How old were you then when you were saying all this?
16 years old.
16, okay.
100 pounds.
This is why, my huge mission to bring all of this in schools.
Correct,
You know, like to teach them these tools
Yes.
of emotional intelligence and these affirmations, the journaling, your breath. Like, you know, I think it just needs to start because there's just too much depression at these young age right now. There's a loss of connection. There's a lot of fear and the busyness. So,
it's scary. I mean, I speak at schools, and that's my mission.
You do? I love that.
Getting in front of schools and teaching this, Well, so here's the thing. I've been speaking. I gave my first, what you could say, kind of a keynote in a religious setting at the age of 18 years old. So I've kind of already was on that process of speaking in front of individuals, trying to share a message of hope and encourage people to live better. Years later, in my 30s, I'm sitting here wondering why I received so many great things from the home invasion. I see it as one of my greatest blessings, one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. But I was thinking for a short time, I started thinking, well, why did it have to be so painful and drastic? Why, you know, because one of the things that happened is my wife ended up having a stillborn with that baby that she was pregnant with.
Oh, wow.
And so he took our unborn child, he took our safety, our home, everything.
Wow.
And so I sat there and I was thinking, why is it that it had to be this crazy, crazy experience?
You know, it's so funny you say that because I keep going, okay, God, thank you. You know, I went through that. I survived it. Please, I don't want anything else. I don't want nothing. Give me another one like that. You know? Because, we can look back and say we survived it. We went through this. But why did it have to be so, hard. Painful, so hard? Gosh, I didn't know that your wife lost the baby afterwards as well. So now you guys had to grieve that as well.
It was one of the most could have been the most destructive parts of our life. My wife and I, we have this amazing relationship, and we talk about what helped us survive that. And we talk about, you know, how is it that it made us stronger as a couple? And the amazing thing, though, is that we both recognize the good and the reason behind it. And so we're very open communication, always talking. And we haven't always been that way. We've gotten a lot better as we've gotten older and kind of realized the power in it. But the most amazing thing for me is looking back and wondering, why did we have to go through these hard things? And I remember I was sitting in front of an audience of high school students, and there was probably, I don't know, maybe 800 kids in this auditorium. And all I see is the top of their head and a glow from screens on their face as they're looking down at their cell phones. And I'm starting to talk, and I'm trying to sit here, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get these kids to engage with me? The key to being a great speaker is having a conversation with 1,000 people at once. You're not speaking at them. You're trying to have a conversation. You're trying to get them to engage. And I wasn't getting anything. And I'd been asking, why was this so hard? And all of a sudden I said, and the man stabbed me in the chest. And it was like watching the wave at a sporting event. Every single head comes up and the phones went down. And I just remember thinking in my mind and hearing just this little statement, this is the reason.
Ooh, I got full goosebumps.
Right?
Oh,
I mean,
wow, yeah. So that's like you're seeing that the reason what you're saying is like you got stabbed so you can reach those teenagers because they're not going to listen. You know, they're on their phones, most of them, and they're face down until you have this like intense story of being stabbed, and they're like, whoa, got to listen to that. So God gave you that gift.
Yes.
So you can reach the hearts of teenagers and children.
Yes. It's basically shocking them out of their cell phone coma.
Yes.
I mean, that's all it is.
Okay.
And in that moment, all of a sudden, my thoughts and my life changed. I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And I changed it to, why was I trusted enough that I could take this experience and make something good.
Because God knows you're sharing his light,
Yeah.
right, with all these
Yeah.
children, because you're talking about faith
Yeah.
and, and what are you teaching these children? Like, once you get their attention, what are you telling them?
It's interesting because you're in schools, and so you can't go into God.
Oh, right. Okay.
But
yes.
I let them ask questions at the end, and every single time somebody asks, do you think God helped you through this? And they open the door, and now I can answer.
Okay.
But there are other ways of teaching it. Brene Brown did this, I think it was a TEDx talk or a keynote, and she talked about the odds of you being born into your place in your time, into your family, with your personality, your characteristics. And somebody did the math, and the odds are actually 1 in 400 billion. And listen, some people may think that we act in circumstance in the roll of the dice, but if we're talking about God, who has perfection in mind and thinks perfectly and does things perfectly, that 1 in 400 billion wasn't a roll of the dice, it was with intention. And so if it's with intention, 1 in 400 billion other options, and he said, Brick, I'm putting you here, and I'm going to let you experience this. So even if you don't even bring God into it, you can say your chances of living and going to the school you're in, being in the United States or wherever you're at, and having the privileges you have is 1 in 400 billion. What are you doing? You won the greatest lottery there ever was. What are you doing with your life? And if you think that you are in the worst place in your life, and it's not for me to teach them that it's not, right? There's other ways to teach it, but I want them to see how special they are. Yeah. So that's the first thing. I want you to see how special and how amazing are you. And once we can get them to kind of start thinking in that direction, like, wow, why am I out of the 1 in 400 billion? What is that? What does it mean? Then you start talking about 1 in 400 billion of being put into a place where you're surrounded by people who love you. And some may say, well, nobody loves me. Yeah. Well, I can tell you that the teachers that we had in school, they're there not for the paycheck. They're there because they love the kids. Oh, yeah. The counselors, the other students that, see you and want to be your friend, but we ignore them, right? There's so many other aspects of life that point to our worth than just that 1 in 400 billion.
But we almost have to see it ourselves first.
Yes.
Right? Because a lot of times they could be, like you said, my son actually does that sometimes. Like, I don't have any friends. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have so many friends. Yeah. But I think it's a lot of his self-worth, right? So they have to love themselves first, then they'll see the love all around them. And that was actually a lot with my husband. Yeah. He's this great 6'4" man, good looking, handsome, all the things. He was a dentist. Yeah. His self-worth wasn't it, his own self-love. So how could he see all the love that surrounded him? Yeah. His wife, his children, the community. He had so many friends. He did. He couldn't see it because first you need to see it yourself. So I love that you're teaching that to kids early on. It truly has to start with them to see the love around them.
And what the thing is, I tell them of this story about me speaking to the mirror, and I tell them, pay attention because when you're lying. Especially a kid that age, every single one of them has lied to their parents. I mean, let's be honest, right? If we think our kids have never lied to us, we're lying to ourselves, right? So it's one of these things where it's like, okay, kids, when you're lying. So when you look in the mirror and you say something that's profound and truthful and positive about yourself, pay attention to how you feel in that moment. And think, do I feel like I'm lying? Now, not believing and not truth is two different things, right? We can say all the things that we don't believe in, but if they're the truth, we have to identify the truth. So what's amazing to me is towards the end of that 30 days, I started saying things like, Brick, anybody would be lucky to be your friend because you are loyal. You will defend them to the death. You are a protector. I started naming all these different things that were very positive about myself. And the most amazing one is it was towards the very end. I finally looked in the mirror and I said, you're a loved son of God. And I was so hit with love that it changed my entire life. That was the moment that I was converted to God and to Christ. And that changed I just wanted to be close to them my entire life.
Oh, wow. So you just felt it.
I
Like
felt
in
it
that moment.
In that moment.
Because I think those things, like you said in the beginning, those affirmations, those children or might not believe it, or, adults might not believe it at first. They're like, oh, this is silly. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. But if you say it enough, you start seeing it. You're training your mind now. You're kind of rewiring your mind to see how God sees you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that power of saying something and believing it is one of the greatest gifts that God's given us. Everything that we can accomplish in life, you look at it, the people that are so confident, that are always seem to be successful and lucky, it's not that they're successful and lucky more than anybody else, other than the fact that they just believe inherently that they're going to figure a way out to be successful. They're going to figure a way out to do it.
Yes.
And that's why they do it. And those that are just after 2 or 3 times, they're like, oh, I guess I can't do it. It's because they never found that inner warrior, that inner peace, that inner power that we all have. Yeah. We just have to tap into it. Mm-hmm. And I love that you're saying about your children with friends. I've got kids, and all my kids have unique names. And maybe I curse them, with the same.
How many kids do you have?
So I got 4 kids.
You have 4 kids.
Yeah. So my oldest name is Rockwell.
Mm-hmm.
I got a daughter named Tyler. Then I got my second son. His name is Bronco. And then my youngest son is Maverick.
Oh, my gosh. I love all these names.
So just out there, there's meaning behind all of them. But the funny thing is all my kids, especially my boys, they're like, oh, yeah, I don't have any friends. And then we'll go to like parent-teacher conference or whatever. We're walking the halls with our kid. And it's just, hey, Bronco, what's up? Hey, Rocco, what's going on? And we're like, dude, I thought you said you didn't have any friends. But we've had 10 people yell out your name and wave to you. Yes. And Bronco's the funniest one of all. He's just like, what's up? He just keeps walking. And you're just like, dude, you got a friend, right? So it's so funny, these kids, like you're saying, when they don't find that in themselves.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think is so amazing that so many people miss. So, and I know this isn't basically, we talk about God quite a bit today, and it's not religious, but if you read the Bible, Christ talks about 2 great commandments. One is love God, and the other one is love your neighbor, but he doesn't end with love your neighbor. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. So is Christ really saying we should love ourselves first, and then we can actually more fully love our neighbor? Oh,
I love that. So true.
So what are we doing to love ourselves, though?
Yes. Yeah, we've lost touch with that. Yeah, I feel like society, but now more and more people, especially as I have more guests on and asking how they got out of their depression and their dark times, they had to spend time with themselves.
Yeah.
So find space to be alone with themselves, with their feelings, and be truly honest, and then start the process of loving all parts of them and forgiveness.
Yeah.
It all started there, that self-awareness.
Yes.
And digging deeper as to the barriers. Sometimes I always say, I have to get out of my own way.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'll have doubts, and I'm like, God has a plan.
Yes.
And I need to be confident and step into that plan. Even though I'm like, tiptoeing around it. But I get out of my own way, say, okay, God will just keep opening up these doors. He's told me to share my voice, even though I grew up being my family, when I go back to Quebec City, they're like, who are you? I was the most shy person, so quiet. I hid always behind a little smile.
Yeah.
But I did not like to go on any stages. I did not like to get in front of all cameras. Yeah. I could even barely watch myself at old videos back in the day, Yep. And now look what I'm doing, and using my voice, because I know there's a power into that. But I just kind of had to just get out of the way of what God is telling me to do, is to use my voice. And with more practice, I get more confident, right?
Yep.
And believe in myself. But I had to really work with my self-worth and my self-doubt, saying, I have everything I need to do this, And
I think the truly powerful thing is when you can find the thing you hate most about yourself and find purpose behind it. And so few of us try to do that. For me, I talk about myself in high school. I'm this little guy, big name. And I grew out of it. But the other thing that happened at the time is I had this lazy eye. And my lazy eye is actually in control as long as I don't look up. But when you're the littlest guy in the room and you want to be a small target, you don't look up with your head, you look up with your eyes. And when I look up with my eyes, they split apart to opposite ends of my face, and I'm pretty much blind. And I used to hate that. Absolutely hated it. And now it's the greatest thing. I've passed it on to 2 of my kids to have the same thing. And we love to sit in church, and when the kids in front of us look back at us, we'll do it. And then the kids will start giggling. And by the time the parents look back at us to see what's going on, we're all got our normal faces back on, right? So the thing that I hated most about myself when I was younger is actually one of the things I love most, and my kids love it.
Yes.
So I found something that brings joy to other people and makes kids just laugh uncontrollably. And you know, we're on a podcast, so nobody can see it, but it's pretty unique. But
Yes.
it's the whole point is if you can find that thing that you look in the mirror and you think, I hate that about me,
Yes.
and you spend time trying to figure out, why would a God with perfect knowledge give me that? He doesn't make mistakes.
No.
So if he didn't make mistakes, but he gave that thing I hate most, what's he trying to do for me? Is this a gift? You know, and that's something each one of us has to discover.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. Like to love it and to get empowered by it. And some people put barriers. They'll say, well, I can't be a doctor because I don't have all these straight A's. But you know, what you can do is maybe hire a tutor, right? Hire somebody that's really good at it. And you can still, might take a little bit longer, but you can still become that, right?
Yeah.
And maybe God did that just so, who knows, you'll have other gifts once you are that doctor. You'll have a different understanding because you worked so hard, you know, to get there and didn't see it as a barrier, right? And oftentimes we do that with the things we don't like.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like communication. So what did I do? As I wrote my book and my publisher's like, you're going to have to get out there. Well, I hired a public speaker coach, right? And to help me with that, to have that confidence. And it takes practice. Yeah. So I think, anyone that doesn't like something, just start loving it and forgiving it and grace and compassion.
I think the game you play of what if can be very interesting in that scenario. Let's say you're talking about that person that wants to be a doctor and they just don't have the grades, and they work really hard to learn how to study, and even with all their efforts, they never get above a B average, and they just don't get into medical school. They grow up, they have a child. Their child, they teach them the study habits they learned. That child excels. That child goes to college, becomes this world-renowned doctor who cures some disease, right? We don't understand the gift that we're given, and hopefully maybe after this life we will. But the problem is all we focus on is I didn't become a doctor instead of looking at what really happened. Yeah. So the greatest example I can share with you is one day in school I got choked out by a bully in class. Wow. A teacher trying to stop it. It was one of the lowest points. I received death threats. I was hit in the back of the head with rocks. I was taped to a tree. It was brutal. And my kids have heard my stories because they come and listen to me speak all the time. Well, my oldest son, Rockwell, he actually was bullied one day in class, and they started to choke him out. And he stood up for himself and pushed the kid off, but because of zero tolerance, he was suspended. And I had to go pick him up from school. And when I picked him up from school, we're driving home, and I said, I looked over at Rockwell, and I said, Rockwell, why do you think God let that happen to you? Why do you think that, you're being picked on like you are? And after a moment, he looked at me and he said, Dad, now that I know what it feels like when I get older, I can make sure I help other people and stand up for other people. It was like full circle. That's why I was bullied. To see the kids that I have, not because of who I am, but because of the experiences I have and because I'm vulnerable and sharing them with them, my kids are empowered to be different. And so when they experience the same experience I have in high school, they react differently. And so me being bullied in high school, I've talked to thousands and thousands of kids, but the most important effect it had was on my own children and how it gave them strength and empowered them to be.
So you're stopping that generational. And maybe, maybe your grandfather or who knows, parents got bullied, but you're stopping it now.
Yes.
With your kids, know, and that's how I feel. My whole why is that, there was suicide on both sides of Scott's family. Wow. And I'm saying that's it. It's stopping here. Yeah. It's not going to happen for my kids because I'm going to give them all the tools for emotional intelligence and just self-love and self-worth. I want to know. That's why I keep diving into all
Yeah.
the modalities, because I'm curious and I love having guests that were addicts, I want to know. After my husband died, that's all I wanted to read was stories of people, how they got out of the darkness. And I started seeing common threads. Common things, faith was a big one, and there was the journaling, taking space for meditation and the affirmations and, therapy, of course, therapy. I've done a lot of therapy and that's helped so much, writing. I actually say that writing, now that I've been writing my second book, it's so healing.
Yeah.
I tell everybody to write a book, even if it's just for you.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd write a book either. Yeah, but just start writing. That you come to your own clarity writing. That's what I find. It just gets me out of where I'm kind of confused, where I'm going. But when I write it down and I'm rereading it, I'm like, oh, okay, these are maybe past patterns that's showing up. And there's just little signs that you start noticing, and it's very healing to write.
It's interesting when you start to write, especially, I think everybody should write a memoir.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And reflect, because it's a big thing about reflecting. And I'm not good at journaling, but I speak so much on what happened that it's like a verbal, tradition. There was a tradition of verbal stories being passed down. But I sat down to write the book because everybody's write a book about the home invasion, write a book about the home invasion. And I sat down, I can't even tell you how many times, and I couldn't write a single thing about the home invasion. I was speaking about it weekly and I couldn't write anything. And finally I just took a breath and I just started writing. And I wrote my book, The Bully Guard, and it's my story in high school of being bullied and how I overcame the depression and the suicidal ideation. How learning to love myself empowered me to change the culture of my school completely. And I didn't even recognize it until years later when somebody was telling me the effect that all had. I didn't understand all of it until I started writing, and it was almost like I couldn't write the home invasion story because I needed to write the first story before the pre-sequel or whatever, prequel, right?
Yes.
I had to write that. And so it's interesting because everybody's like, well, when are you going to write the book about the home invasion? I'm like, I don't know, but I've got this other book, and it's more for teenagers, so you can read it, but it's going to help your kids more than anything. But
I love that. I love that you wrote that book. And like you said, it kind of clicked on me when you said, oh, it changed the culture after that of the school that you were at.
Yeah.
So not only you're doing it now to change the culture, your own family.
Yes.
You actually did that for that whole school. So it's like God knew you could handle it. You can survive it. So he's like, oh, we're going to make it really bad for him. Like, I mean, you had death threats. I mean, it was so bad, but he knew you were strong.
Yeah.
He gave you that gift, and now to save that school, all the other students that probably couldn't have made it through. You know?
It's interesting because, growing up the way I grew up, where I would get bucked off a horse and I'd be hurt, and my mom would say, you're getting back in the saddle, and they'd put me in the saddle, and there were tears, and I was trembling, and yet I'd figured out how to face my fears. I went through a lot of things where my mom would ask me constantly, why do you think this is happening? What is God trying to tell you? What's the great thing you can take from this? What's the positive?
I love your mom.
My mom is awesome.
I love your mom.
She is amazing. And, I used to tell everybody I'm a mama's boy and, do or die. And she did some amazing things for me. And it's interesting because I think that most of us make a bigger impact than we think. And we don't realize it. It was a year ago I ran into a friend at Lowe's Hardware, and he said, hey, I've been watching your social media. I had no idea you were battling with depression back then. I said, yeah, it was mostly my sophomore year. By my senior year, I was elected senior vice president. And he's like, I only remember you then. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had Brick's life. He's got it all together. And I'm like, I said, no, you have no idea. I sat there every day looking at you and wishing I had friends as loyal as yours and wishing that I had your life. We had this interesting conversation about our high school reunions it's actually attended by more than 30 or 40% of our graduating class. Huge attendance. And he told me, he says, you don't understand, we were different. There wasn't cliques. Everybody was inclusive. And he started talking about like how I empowered that. It completely caught me off guard. I just thought I was just struggling to get through it. And here he is telling me the impact I had. We don't know it. And we don't always get the opportunity to hear that. So maybe if you're out there listening right now and you're wondering, am I making an impact? Trust me, it's is deeper than you can imagine.
Yes, so deep. I love that you mentioned that, because even us, meeting and me sharing the story, we'll never know how many people,
Right.
but it's a ripple effect. But when you do, it's like God will plant, you ran into him in the lows.
Yeah.
He probably needed you to know the impact you are having. So keep going, keep doing it. Because I get these little messages now.
Yeah.
And I say, no, they're like, oh, thank you. I said, I'll receive, I'll receive it, but I'll say, but I don't think you understand. You saying that to me keeps that fire going that I need, the energy to keep going and sharing and having guests that can possibly change somebody's life on the other end. And a lot of times it's for me, because I listen to you and then I'm like, oh, my son, I'm seeing little signs. Yeah. There's something deeper and I need to dig more into it. Even though I see it, there's something there. And so I always get something myself out of having the guest on. So it's so powerful. I mean, I'm so glad we got aligned by Tyler Hall.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about you before coming here, but what you provided me alone was huge and impactful. And I will bring that back home to my family. And I have no doubt the audience as well. So how can people connect with you? Because you said you're a speaker now, you have your book. How can they can connect with you?
So the amazing thing about having a unique name like mine, Brickman Allen, you Google that and you're just going to find me. I mean, there's not many Brickman Allens out there. So
it's a great name. It's a perfect, very fitting.
Yes. So, I mean, if you want to find my book, just go to Amazon, type Brickman Allen. Google Brickman Allen, you'll find my website. My Instagram is The Real Brickman. More than anything, I think the key is if you want to find that life-changing experience, just look, right? If you're not connecting with me, connect with someone, but don't sit there passive. Life isn't meant to be passive. It's meant to be lived and experienced and to be joyful. Yeah. If you're not experiencing joy, try to figure it out. But those are the easiest thing is with a unique name like mine, just Google me and you'll find me.
You'll find you. Oh my gosh, you're incredible. I love that you're saying find joy. That's one thing that's been coming up is that, okay, what brings me joy? Yeah. Then do that, right? Make sure you bring that in as well, in our busy lives and everything. And now what's your plan with the kids? Like, are you still wanting to connect more with the kids or have a program of your own to help kids through bullying or?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Your vision?
I've actually done, I've been doing it for 20 years without charging a dime. And I've traveled as far away as Europe to do it. It's been all pro bono from just my companies providing financial means. My next step is I'm trying to retire from all of, the entrepreneur life and go full-time speaking. Not to make a ton of money, but the fact that I know if I'm doing it full-time, I can reach more people. Yes. So I speak corporations, I speak at, big events, trade shows, and then speaking at schools. And really that's the whole focus, is trying to get out there and get a message out there that'll change the individual. I
want you to speak at my kids' school. I'm like, wow, I want them to hear you and listen to you. And wow. And then I find though, when you are, going to follow that passion, you say, pro bono, but God will somehow provide, even though, because now you're going to be impacting so many people as well. You continue to, and a big plan. Now I'm curious. Yeah, I know you're a cowboy, so are you still, what are you doing now?
Well, it's really tough. I've had horses on and off throughout my adult life. Before COVID, I was traveling so much, and my wife's not into horses. I had this one horse that got out multiple times and got on the busy road by our house. And my wife finally told me, if you're going to be traveling, you can't have the horses. Oh, yeah. I think that there's a time and place for everything. I think that when I retire, I'll have horses, I'll train, I'll do all those things. But I've kind of put it aside because this is more urgent than my personal passion. I think that there's power in horses and working with horses and learning patience.
Yes, I did a therapy with a question. I went on to Writer's Island, and anyways, they had horses there, and they're like, oh, do you want to sign up for a therapy session with a horse? It was intense. It was intense. The power. I can't wait to do that with my daughter because she has loved horses since she was young. And when we lived in Wasilla, Alaska, all our neighbors had horses, and she did horse camps and all that. So I said, I need to find that locally for her to do that because they say they're all heart and they can feel you. Was it 35 feet?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? The radius?
Yes.
They can feel your energy.
They feel your energy.
Yes.
Their heartbeat will sync with your heartbeat.
Yes, I did that at the end. They're like, give whatever I needed to let go. They say, give it to the horse and then take on what he's going to give you something, you know?
Yeah, they're amazing. They teach you so much. One of my things that I talk about is one of the greatest things these horses taught me was living outside of my own needs. You ride a horse all day long in the Arizona heat, and the first thing you want to do when you get done is you want to go get a drink of water. But you have to recognize the horse that carried you can't go get their own drink of water, especially if you haven't unsaddled them and cared for them and cooled them off. If they go to the water and just start drinking, they can actually get sick. So you actually have to say, okay, I'm going to forget about how thirsty I am. I'm going to take care of my horse and make sure that that horse is good. And then I'm going to go take care of my needs afterwards. And it was a big theme in my family. And that's when I started talking about live outside. I talk about that a lot, living outside fear, limitations, but mostly it's living outside ourselves and seeing the world around us and recognizing that by living outward is when we're truly living.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel it was we touched on so many things, a powerful conversation.
Yes.
And I can't wait to hear you talk again and see what you're going to do. And most of all, I want you to speak in front of my kids. They need to hear you speak to them.
Yeah, and anytime, just invite me. I'm happy to come speak at youth groups of all sizes.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you having me on with the podcast. So definitely invite me out. I'd love to make that
even at my
connection.
church. I'd love to.
That'd be great.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.